CDPR staff have all quit, and by all I mean some, according to a journal article, allegedly, to form indie studios that will be attacked by journalists in the future for not being ideologically captured, while CDPR uses discriminatory DEI practices to replace problematic devs who check boxes and right-think. Wonder Woman is cancelled after the studio and 2 others fall apart following the amazing failure of the Arkham series when DEI policies ended the most respected superhero franchise ever made as a joke by having strong independent man-body Harley blowing Batman. Yes, the Batman's head off on a park bench. Rest in peace, Kevin Conroy, you deserved so much more respect than what Sweet Baby Inc. gave you. NetEase is dropping all of their studios' support outside China, accusing Western studios of being full of DEI nonsense, lazy developers, and it is too annoying to have to deal with Western censorship and meddling. And did I just phase back into the Weasel timeline? Because how is China complaining about Western authoritarianism in gaming? Now look, this is about to be a very common thing, because a decade ago, political extremists funded by the government, and that's a conspiracy fact now, entered the games industry through activist hires, journalists, consulting firms. They used their positions, HR, backstabbing, to target developers with talent who are just there to make some games, not to spread the DEI religion. These activists had these devs and a few ethical journalists blacklisted, tarnished their names, drove them from the industry with the woke inquisition. You're going to see creatives leaving or being pushed from the studios they built as AAA throats DEI indoctrination. And because these are the talented devs, the devs with actual passion and love of games, they're going to go indie or AA, funding new projects with what they earned in AAA or through crowdfunding like Kickstarter. Now, it's a good idea to keep your eye on these new companies and who is forming them, because the current staff of BioWare, which made Anthem and Veilguard, is a completely different group of people than the ones who made Baldur's Gate through Dragon Age Origins. The devs who made The Witcher 3 have left to form their own studio, making a game that is going to look and feel much more like The Witcher than Ship of Theseus Witcher 4. Blizzard developers, seeing RTS abandoned for not being profitable enough for Boss Kotick, formed their own studio called Frost Giant, focused on making an RTS. Now, even if they can get millions to make the game, it can take years and anywhere from $20 to $200 million for AAA studios to make games. Indie is more viable than ever, yet still a monumental task for finance and time. They need to be working for years on a minimal salary, knowing if the project doesn't do well, that can be 3+ years of their life with no payoff. Unlike AAA, where even if you make a Veilguard or Concord, or a cancelled before release slop, you still got a huge salary for a decade to make it. This means these studios need dedicated, trusting, passionate devs willing to take a risk who really want this project to succeed. And this also means even though the games they make may be lower budget and have more jank and fewer features, it can also be more innovative, with more attention to detail made by people who respect and love games as much as the audience. Not to mention, it can be a launching pad. Consider how before Baldur's Gate 3, Larian made 2 similar games in Original Sin 1 and 2. Now, should you fund these games? That's always up to you. It's a project you want to see. Do you think they did good work at their previous studio? Do you think it will be finished? Is it a good use of your money? We need to remember that our loudest voice is our wallets. And we can see that because if you watch industry self-fellatio celebrations like the DICE Awards, they are in a complete rage as now the audience has closed their wallets to AAA slop and government USAID checks are bouncing. They have nothing to live off of beyond spite and their hatred of games and gamers. Let nobody tell you how to spend your money, just to remember that it can help pave the way to the games industry you want. At the same time, we should be keeping our eyes on potential industry entrants. So many of these studios are people who built up great franchises, and their value is obvious, as it can be shown by the free fall of the studios that they were removed from in the past few years. Many do not fit with corporate structures. They have their own ideas and creativity. This is where we get the likes of Jump King, Balatro, Lethal Company, Among Us, and more. We get games that are a response to what the industry is doing or not doing. Ashes of Creation, a game so transparent it has led both to praise and fanaticism in support of it, and some amazing crash outs and conflicts. Ashes is a response to the decline of MMORPGs, a genre that was once top of the online gaming world and is now abandoned without a creative innovation in over a decade. The only other major project, a League of Legends MMO that was announced half a decade ago, and by now is likely vaporware. And on the other end, China is divesting from all its Western studios, while saying they're doing so due to woke nonsense and the laziness of Western developers. Yikes. Naturally, that's just part of the story. We even saw them pulling out from other Eastern studios. For example, shutting down Uka Studios the day Visions of Mana came out, a great game that sadly never got a chance. On one hand, they're annoyed with having to put up with Western puritanism and censorship. And normally when China talks poorly of the West, you can chalk it up to propaganda, but what makes this so bad is they're not even wrong. It is unacceptable that things have gotten this bad here, that tyranny is becoming the norm in the West, and these activists have managed to stifle the creative energy of not just gaming, but every entertainment industry. It's not only China, Japanese and Korean studios have said much of the same. For example, the Dragon Quest remake, developers complained about the West forcing them to censor female and male. Yes, the West is so deranged, they don't want foreign companies accepting that there are men and women, and instead demands the use of Type A and Type B in order to appease extremist activists that believe mothers should be called, and I quote, inseminated persons. The West has created a vortex, a space in the games industry where they used to be behemoths of AAA, industry giants who have voluntarily relinquished their power and authority as they openly pursue obnoxious tactics that gamers clearly loathe. BioWare, Blizzard, Bethesda are shadows of their former selves. Indie, AA studios are hungry to show their passion for game making. Gamers are just as hungry for games as good as what the industry made decades ago, and ready to put their money into these new studios since Concord and the Veilguard have made it very clear they don't want your money and have no respect for gamers. Previously rare presences like South Korea and China are easily causing market disruption now. Games like Genshin Impact and the MiHoYo games finally bringing mobile games to console that feel like actual games. Games like Black Myth Wukong bringing top-notch action and authentic cultural representation. Games like Stellar Blade show respect for beautiful women that we used to have for heroines like 2B, Lara Croft, Chun-Li, and Samus before so-called feminists declared femininity to be anathema to the modern feminist manifesto. Do not worry that the AAA games industry is crashing. Celebrate the layoffs of people who openly hate you, still lashing out at their elitist parties like the DICE Awards, and be cruel to those who have been cruel to you, like Veilguard developers who think it's fine to punch a gamer 100 times, but a crime to get a single hit in return. Remember, these are professionals. In no other industry would professionals be able to get away with such unprofessional, disgusting behavior for this long. Remember, these layoffs were self-inflicted, and gamers were the only ones trying to tell the industry how to avoid the layoffs. Do not apologize for telling these idiots not to stick their cocks in the electrical outlet when they get shocked. It is not cruel at that point to point and laugh. You did your kind deed when you told them that what happened was going to happen. These people are at an advantage. They have government funds, corporate backing, established IPs, well-known brands. They are privileged. They have incredible opportunities. Every bit of their ideology is built on a lie. They are the ones who are benefiting most from the systems, and they squandered it all. They are now risking losing their positions to indies who are willing to work hard and love video games. This is a real-life David versus Gamora. And right now, David's getting non-stop crits, and Gamora's flailing about in its decadence, screaming at the clouds and blaming everyone else for problems they made for themselves. You should have acted sooner. The rebirth is already here, and you're gonna find out painfully fast that there is no such thing as Marvel fatigue, hero shooter fatigue, toxic gamers, live service fatigue, and whatever other nonsense excuse that gets used to explain why your games keep failing while you still ignore the elephant, which is now the only thing in the room. Gamers stop playing your games because your games are awful. Full stop. And if you don't want to make good games, someone else does. But hey, you can still keep pushing out games that aren't made for us. And keep finding out that our money is just not made for you.